As an English Critical Studies and Lit major, this week's materials were very intriguing to me because of how much it involved critical thinking in literature and in film. And it also intrigued me because of the discussion on media and what we're exposed to, because I am a public relations minor and looking to be part of the media industry and looking to be a part of creating the media that we are exposed to. Surprisingly, I had never heard of the concept death of the author before this week's video on it. In my understanding, death of the author is basically the idea that the author's beliefs and their personal history should not impact the ways in which readers interpret their specific writings. And while I believe this is nice in theory, in reality it's near impossible to not think about the paratext of the author and where they're from and what they believe in. So I'd like to start off by addressing Ari's questions on death of the author. She asked if an author's background and point of view are hindering to a person's own creative thoughts, why is it pushed so much in English literature classes, and does an author's point of view really hinder a reader's creativity, or does it enhance their understanding of the material? To answer Ari's first question, English literature classes push the paratext of the author and their intentions because they are a part of the critical studies discourse. I believe it's because it's important to look at all aspects of a text. And according to Eau Claire's website, the English Critical Studies emphasis, quote, teaches students to critically engage with texts of various genres and media to uncover meanings and interpretations that have implications far beyond the classroom, end quote, and students studying this area are, quote, equipped to critique literature, society, and culture from multiple angles. So as an English Critical Studies in Lit major, I've studied both fiction and nonfiction texts, and can say that most of my classes have indeed studied the author's biographical information and their situation at the time that they wrote specific texts, whether they were fiction or not, because of the meanings and interpretations that it allows us to uncover as we read our texts. For example, I took a Bronte sister class a couple semesters ago, and their biographical information was a very, very pertinent part of the course, and it allowed us to better understand the characters and the situations in the text by knowing the life circumstances of the three sisters. All three of them very much used their own life events and the people in their lives to write their books and use them as inspiration. And knowing the biographical information about the sisters enhanced the reading and provided me with new angles to understand the text. And it definitely did not hinder my creativity in any way. If anything, it allowed me to think even more critically about what each sister was trying to say with their specific texts, relating back to their biographical information. And it surprises me that Ari had a literature professor who doesn't really encourage creative interpretations, because that has not been my experience at all. All of my critical studies professors have encouraged me to think outside of the box and really take control of my creative thoughts when discussing and writing about the texts that we have read in class. Because all of the Bronte sisters have passed away, it's easier to speculate on what their intentions might have been than, say, what John Green's intentions might have been when writing The Fault in Our Stars. And as I said before, death of the author might be good in theory and could allow readers to have their own perspective on a text completely, but it isn't, in my opinion, feasible. As a critical studies in literature major, I believe it's very important to understand all of the aspects of the book, and that includes the author's intentions and what happened in their life. And knowing this information, to me, adds to the critical reading of the text and allows readers to think about the text in many different ways. Moving on to the next set of materials, I'd like to discuss the hypodermic needle model, the uses of gratification theory, and their interaction with media. The hypodermic needle model, in my understanding, says that an intended message is directly received and completely accepted by the audience, and that the audience is passive to the influence of the media and its message. The uses and gratification theory, on the other hand, says that the audience is an active participant that engages with media texts for different personal reasons, like wants and needs. So I think it's interesting that both of these theories or models come up in this week's materials. They're very contradicting towards each other, but Ari brings up a great point. She believes that people can be affected by both of the theories in juxtaposition, and in my opinion, I think what model people follow depends on what type of media and what message is being sent. I think a good example of the hypodermic needle model is American politics. Once a politician who sides with a specific party says something, their respective followers tend to believe whatever they have to say. I see this most often with avid followers of Trump. They believe everything he says is accurate and the right thing to do, when more often than not, whatever he has said is inaccurate and definitely not the right thing to do. In this circumstance, the hypodermic needle model proves that media consumption is very dangerous. With the uses and gratification theory, people use what they can to satisfy their own needs. I've seen this also with American politics. For example, I have a friend who believes in one thing that Donald Trump stands for, yet she decided to vote for him even though the other issues don't coincide with her beliefs. She believed this one thing to be the most important to her, so she used the media that supported her view and Trump's view to satisfy her need for fulfillment for this one thing that she believed to be important. Regardless of these two examples and models, I believe people can be both passive and active in their media consumption. We're bombarded with different opinions so often that we begin to believe whatever is thrown at us. However, there are still ways that we can seek out information that is told from different perspectives, like different news outlets and different news sources that coincide with our wants and needs. When reading Jessica's response, I was interested in her point that in auteur theory, the director is seen as God, and in her point that most known directors are male. So, in my understanding, auteur theory states that the director is the most important visionary in the creation of a film. Jessica points out that many of the well-known directors or visionaries are males, and that as a female, it may be difficult to break through the stereotypes that women are represented with by these male visionaries. So, to align my opinion with Jessica's, it's concerning to see that women are not being represented by female visionaries very often. This brings me back to misrepresentation and how women are represented in the media. More often than not, we see females through the eyes of male directors. Take Michael Bay and Transformers, for instance, since Lindsay Ellis uses it in the Whole Plate series that we've been viewing. Megan Fox plays the main character's love interest in the first two films. She's often seen with a lack of clothing and shown for the desire of Sam, the main character, and in return for the desire of the male viewers of the films. Eventually, Megan Fox actually got fired by Michael Bay because of a feud that the two had about how Megan Fox was being portrayed. If women are constantly being depicted as these over-sexualized objects on display, how can we progress and show the younger generation that they are worth more and are worth being represented than more than just sex objects? To answer this, we need more female writers, more female directors, and more female involvement with films and other medias. I think one of the main takeaways from this week's set of materials is that medium comes in all shapes and sizes. We're exposed to so many different opinions and ideas, but I think it's important that we look at everything with a critical point of view and take ideas from all angles to fully understand what is being said.